General Hospital spoilers reveal that Geo is gradually becoming the embodiment of one of the most haunting forces quietly taking shape in Port Charles, a force not born of criminal empires, power purges, or economic schemes, but rooted in the truth of his identity. Throughout his life, Geo grew up surrounded by missing pieces, sheltered by people he called family, yet they all guarded one foundational secret: he is the biological child of Brooke Lynn and Dante. No one ever told him. No one ever gave him the chance to choose his path with honesty or freedom. And it's this truth, once it burst open, that began to shake everything Geo had ever known. He is no longer just a young man trying to find his place. He's someone being pulled into the center of an uncontrollable storm, where every step is guided by doubt, anger, disappointment, and a desperate search for self. The shock Geo faces isn't just emotional, it's a restructuring of his entire self-perception. He once thought he was an outsider, only to discover he stands at the heart of two rival forces, the Quartermaine dynasty and the Corinthos family. One side represents legacy, power, social pressure, and cunning ambition. The other is a world of loyalty, silent sacrifice, blood, and guilt, where Sonny is both revered and feared, both a role model and a haunting presence. And now Geo, in every cell of his body, carries the blood of both. A living intersection of two worlds that were never meant to coexist. This realization changes not only how Geo sees the world but also alters his every behavior, reaction, and seemingly unconscious choice. He can no longer stand on the sidelines while Tracy wages war against Sonny, a man Geo has called uncle all his life, a source of strength who stood by him when no one else did. But he also can't forgive Brooke Lynn, the mother who kept the truth from him for so many years in the name of family reputation. And Dante, someone he never imagined as a father, now appears in his mind as a man who lived beside him, yet chose silence. Every moment Geo tries to remain calm is a moment he fights a dozen voices in his head. One urges him to embrace the truth and rebuild from scratch. The other tells him to run, to escape from the people who wrote his life like a script. In this chaos, Port Charles feels too small, too suffocating to hold a mind exploding with unspoken truths. The oppression Geo feels doesn't come from the outside, it stems from within. His new identity isn't a revelation, it's a sentence, chaining his soul to a fate he never chose. The most terrifying part? No one truly realizes that Geo is no longer the boy who once ran around the estate with a carefree smile. He is now a person torn between two worlds. Every word Tracy says, every move Sonny makes, every glance from Brooke Lynn becomes a trigger filtered through layers of emotion and doubt. And when those emotions stack up, compressed with no release, they turn into unpredictable outbursts, sudden rage, suffocating silence, behaviors that leave everyone stunned, unsure of who Geo has become. Port Charles stands on the edge of a seismic shift, not triggered from the outside, but growing inside Geo himself. What he's experiencing is one of the most powerful transformations, not in the structure of power, but in the structure of self. His new identity isn't just redefining his past, it's reshaping his future in an entirely new way. And once Geo fully accepts that truth, embraces it, and wields it as a weapon to step out of the shadows, everything will change. The balance of power in Port Charles will tip. Not because of a new mob boss, but because of a young man carrying the blood of two opposing lineages and finally daring to define himself. Geo is trapped in an emotional spiral he can't escape, as his true identity is laid bare and the secrets kept from him for a lifetime unravel in the harsh light of reality. The revelation that he is the son of Brooke Lynn and Dante, and thus a true Quartermaine, brings no sense of belonging or safety. On the contrary, it feels like a dagger to the heart of the identity he fought to build. To Geo, the Quartermaines have never been family, not because they're distant, but because their existence is intertwined with lies, power plays, manipulation, and political games that he's now being forced to become a part of. He can't and won't call that home. This rejection of the Quartermaines is at the heart of a new crisis quietly forming in Port Charles. Consumed by his identity crisis and betrayed by those closest to him, Geo is beginning to act in ways no one could have foreseen. He's becoming colder, more impulsive, more guarded than ever. And that's where the real danger lies, not in physical violence, but in the unpredictable, escalating tension in Joe's increasingly unstable psyche. He isn't just distancing himself from the Quartermaines. He's starting to question every action, every word, believing they're all meant to mold him into a version of himself they can control. The threat isn't that Geo will strike, but that he's already preparing something in silence. He's defending himself by building distance, erecting emotional walls, even contemplating leaving everything behind: the estate, the Quartermaine name, the legacy he never asked to inherit. And this is the most dangerous kind of threat Port Charles has seen. A psychological bomb, quietly ticking inside a smart, wounded young man who no longer believes in the concept of family. What was once a private, internal matter is now beginning to spill into larger networks of relationships. Brooke Lynn, the mother now scrambling to mend the rift, finds herself lost in a maze with no way out. Dante, a man who's faced the darkest shadows in law enforcement, now feels helpless, unable to reach his son with reason. Ned and Tracy are confronted with a grim reality. Geo, the boy they thought they could mold into a rightful heir, is now becoming a threat to the very structure of the family. The more hurt Geo feels, the more he pushes others away. The more they call him a Quartermaine, the more he wants to prove he doesn't belong to them. And in that state of mind, new, silent upheaval is taking shape. Geo is starting to build relationships outside the family. Not to seek protection, but to construct a system he alone can control, one where betrayal has no place. This could lead to an alliance with Sonny, or even a plan to separate himself entirely and face both the Quartermaines and the Corinthos family head-on. Geo no longer wants to be the product of a legacy, he wants to rewrite his own history, even if that means confronting those who share his blood. Quietly, he is calculating. Not with brute force, but with a ruthlessness forged by the betrayals his family inflicted on him. And the most dangerous part? No one knows what Geo will do next, not even Geo himself. But one thing is certain, this story will not end with hurt feelings. It's laying the foundation for a new kind of war, not for power, but for identity. And when Geo finally steps out of the shadows, carrying all that repressed fury, Port Charles will face a storm of logic, strategy, and unyielding cold resolve, from the very boy they once believed simply needed protection. Geo is approaching his final breaking point, the place where the pain of betrayal, the sense of isolation, and the burning desire to take control of his own life have crystallized into one unforeseen act, betraying his own family. He is no longer the boy who needed protection, no longer the one waiting in the middle for someone to offer him an explanation. Geo is now taking action, decisive, cold, and calculated. He no longer believes in those who once claimed to love him, nor does he place his trust in the bloodline that ties him to the Quartermaine family, or in any promises from Dante or Brooke Lynn. Because for Geo, truth no longer lies in family or reason, it lies in the feeling of being systematically betrayed. Deceived, hidden from, and manipulated like a pawn in a lifelong family game. The new traits forming in Joe's character, a surge in self-identity, emotional detachment, and a new obsession with controlling his fate, have made him an entirely different force than before. He no longer seeks reconciliation. He doesn't want apologies. What he wants is freedom, the right to choose, and to prove that he can overturn everything that was ever imposed on him. His betrayal doesn't stem from malice, but from long-buried desperation, now transforming into a new energy, dangerous, powerful, and nearly unstoppable. One of the wildest new chapters begins with this transformation. While everyone expected Geo to collapse, remain silent, or seek support from his family, he chose the opposite path, aligning himself with those once seen as enemies, outcasts, people like Sonny, Jason, or even the underground forces once pushed back by the Quartermaines. Geo is calculating, planning, and rebuilding his own world, a world with no space for compromise, and no room for mercy. Because to Geo, if blood ties can betray him, then nothing is worth preserving. Lulu and Dante, who once longed to be reunited with their son, are now being thrust into a painful reality. They try to manage the situation, to mend the cracks, but every effort proves meaningless against a Geo who has completely changed. Every word now rings hollow to him. The love they try to make up for comes too late, and Geo, in a state of obsession with redefining himself, refuses to turn back. He sees every kind gesture as another form of manipulation, a new way to pull him back into the same loop where he was once controlled, deceived, and confined in the name of love. And when all their advice, apologies, and stabilizing attempts fall into cold silence, the truth becomes clear: they have lost Gio. Not to death, but to a deliberate severing of his old life. He is now someone new, a new force, torn between two bloodlines and fueled by long-suppressed rage. And Port Charles will have to face the consequences. This betrayal is not just a family fracture. It's an earthquake, a reversal of order, and a direct blow to the hearts of those who believed that blood was an unbreakable bond. But to Gio, family is no longer a place to return to. It is a scar, an obsession, something he must escape at all costs. And as Gio begins to act for himself, no longer bound by the past or by lineage, only one question remains: who will he bring down first? And is there anyone brave enough to stop a man everyone once believed could be saved by love alone? Gio is falling into the most complex and chaotic mental state of his life, a crisis of identity that is eating away at every fragment of self-perception and trust he once held dear. When the truth was revealed, that he is the biological son of Brooklyn and Dante, his entire worldview collapsed. It wasn't just an ordinary shock, it was a complete shattering of the reality he had once believed to be solid. In Joe's eyes, everyone close to him, from Sonny to Brooklyn, from Tracy to Dante, bears the mark of deception. They didn't just lie by hiding the truth about his origins, they colluded in shaping his life without ever once asking for his consent. That fury, that bitterness from being robbed of the right to know and to choose, is slowly accumulating into a seething and dangerous force. Gio feels like he belongs nowhere. He cannot accept the Quartermaines as family, when they are the ones who chose to bury the truth. He can't embrace the Corinthos household as a safe haven either, when Sonny, the man he once trusted absolutely, did nothing to help him understand who he truly is. The feeling of being manipulated, of being forced into roles he never chose, has turned Gio into someone entirely new, cold, guarded, deeply skeptical. He no longer seeks empathy. He doesn't want belated apologies. He wants to reclaim authority over his own life, and if that means destroying both families who once controlled him, then so be it. From this mindset, a dangerous event is quietly brewing. Gio is no longer a bystander, pulled along by the current of adult decisions. He is now rewriting his own story in the language of rebellion, sharp, final, and unforgiving. Gio could release information that would shake both the Quartermaines and the Corinthos to their cores. He holds secrets no one expects, about shady business deals, underground alliances, and corrupt exchanges that Sonny and Tracy once tried to bury. He could expose everything, not to seek justice, but to burn down what he sees as the rotten foundations of the two most powerful families in Port Charles. What makes the situation even more frightening is that Gio is not acting impulsively or recklessly. On the contrary, he's calculating. He's preparing. Every step he takes, every new connection he makes, serves one purpose: to bring down the world that rejected him. Those who once underestimated Gio, who saw him as a child needing protection, are now feeling unsettled by the look in his eyes, the eyes of someone who trusts no one, who is no longer bound by blood. Brooklyn is desperate to connect with the son she once concealed. Dante is helpless as he watches Gio coldly avoid him. Tracy, who once believed she could control everything, now faces the loss of a grandson she never truly understood the value of. Lulu, the mother who spent years in a coma and only recently returned, is powerless to soothe the fury smoldering in her son's heart. She and Dante struggle daily to stabilize the situation, to mend the widening cracks in the family. But it's all in vain. To Gio, every word, every gesture now is just another version of manipulation. He no longer wants explanations. He wants action. And every step he takes is a blow struck at those who once ran the game without ever asking if Gio agreed to play. One of the most insane events is building, not a murder, not a bloody purge, but a strategic act of revenge from a boy once thought harmless. Joe's presence is now a quiet dread in the hearts of both families. They know he is not silent because he's giving up, but because he's preparing for a counterstrike no one can predict. He might walk into a shareholders' meeting with unexpected evidence. He might stand before a crowd and expose every buried truth. Or worse, he could vanish from the town altogether, taking all the truth with him and leaving behind a power vacuum no one can fill. And when that moment comes, both the Quartermaines and the Corinthos won't just pay for what they did, but for what they didn't do, for not recognizing Gio, not loving him the right way, not believing that one day, the very person they tried to control could be the one to bury them. In the game they once imposed, Gio is no longer the pawn. He is now the player, and no one knows how this game will end. Sonny, the man once seen as the most controversial symbol of power in Port Charles, has now become the only name that still holds a firm place in Joe's chaotic heart. Amid all the emotional wounds, the exposed lies, and an identity so distorted that no one can define it anymore, Gio finds himself returning to the beginning, the only place that still offers him a sense of stability, Sonny. While Brooke, Lynn, Dante, Tracy, and the rest of those bearing the family name are desperately trying, and failing, to make amends, it is Sonny, through his silence, his weathered eyes, and his unspoken loyalty, who becomes the final anchor keeping Gio tethered to reality. And this, quietly, is the beginning of one of the most significant shifts currently unfolding beneath the surface. No one can reach Gio with reason anymore. No apology can soften his heart. But Sonny, with an instinct born of experience, doesn't try to convince Gio, he simply is. No force, no conditions, no long speeches, just quiet presence. Like the pillar Gio once leaned on when he was a boy without a true home. And that presence, seemingly insignificant, is now subtly reshaping Joe's psyche. He no longer sees Sonny as a mob boss or a manipulator, but as the one person who truly saw him, not through status, but through the heart. The madness that once pushed Gio to consider betraying both bloodlines, to destroy everything, is now being halted by the simplest thing of all, trust. While everyone else used words to manipulate, Sonny uses consistency to persuade. And in a world full of deception, that consistency is so rare that it's powerful enough to make someone like Gio pause and begin to turn back. Little by little, Gio lowers his guard. He begins to listen. He stops avoiding Sonny. He starts talking, sharing, and most importantly, trusting. Bit by bit, Sonny is guiding Gio back to the path he once lost, not through pressure, but through a kind of quiet authority that can only exist when two wounded souls recognize one another in silence. This story is proving one of the most unexpected truths. Sonny is no longer the man threatened by Joe's rebellion. He is the one who can steer it. Not the way Tracy tried to, with schemes, strategy, or hollow promises, but by creating a space safe enough for Gio to return on his own. Strangely, as Gio begins to place his trust in Sonny, he also starts to self-regulate. The destructive impulses, the thirst for revenge, the impulsive plans once burning inside him are gradually being replaced by a single question: can I do better? And this quiet transformation is turning Gio from a threat to both the Quartermaine and Corinthos families into a potential bridge, if he's guided the right way. Sonny doesn't need to force Gio back. He only has to prove that Gio no longer needs to run. And it's working. Gio no longer wants to destroy everything. He begins to want to rebuild, not out of loyalty to his blood, but because he wants to believe he can still exist without betraying himself. This shift isn't external. It comes from within Gio. And Sonny, through patience, experience, and the strength of someone who's been through it all, holds the key to guiding that journey. Once Gio truly returns to his center, no longer acting in blind rage, those who once feared he was a ticking time bomb will face a new reality. Gio is no longer a pawn, he is a player, and this time, he's guided by someone who understands the true weight of loyalty: Sonny. Not Tracy. Not Dante. Not anyone who ever tried to manipulate him. Sonny, who demands nothing from Gio but truth, is the one who holds him to this world. And in that, the most surprising thing isn't that Gio nearly destroyed everything, but that the man once deemed the most dangerous is the only one keeping him from becoming a destroyer. That truth, once fully seen, will force all of Port Charles to reckon with itself. Because when Gio stands beside Sonny, no longer a rebellious boy but a man of dual heritage, conviction, and clarity, every other force will have to tread carefully. And in that moment, only one person will hold the key to shaping Joe's future, Sonny, the last person he can still trust.